Overwatch has been out for a while now, and it's gathered lots of praise and a great big fan community, and it probably has a nice little cabin in the mountains that it'll take you to if you just need to get away for the weekend. I've been playing it for the PlayStation 4 with my friend Danny, and it's been a raucous time of adventuring and liberal cursing at turrets while we dominate the pro scene in the year of our Lord, 2016. The videos in the Player Knowledge series are often about narrative design and what a game does with its narrative, and while I have a little bit to say about that here, what I really want to talk about in this video is how Overwatch is a game designed around comfort. Now, I don't intend that to be understood as a negative, and this isn't a video of complaints about the game and about casuals and about how they're changing the professional scene or anything like that. Rather, what I want to demonstrate is that Overwatch makes sure that the player is comfortable at all times in order to make sure that they form a clear, enjoyable relationship with the game. Fundamentally, making sure that someone is comfortable is one of the most useful means of retaining players, and we'll see the mechanisms of this play out over the course of this video. So here are 3 ways that Overwatch uses comfort as a key building block. A lot of what I'm going to say in the following sections is based on Overwatch's family resemblance to Team Fortress 2. Lots of players, forums writers, and critics have referred to this lineage over the past few weeks, and I just want to take a couple seconds to read and show these quotations to give some context for what's going to come after. So Rush Frushtick for Polygon wrote, "As a multiplayer shooter, Overwatch follows in Team Fortress 2's footsteps pretty closely, sticking with simply defined objectives and matches. Every match is some variant of capture this point or defend this point. While not wholly original, these basic objectives accomplish one important thing. They force constant clashes between a wide range of bizarre heroes, all striving for the same strip of land." Alex Hearn for The Guardian wrote that Overwatch is a lot like Team Fortress 2, Valve's seminal team-based first-person shooter. Maybe that's not exactly what he said. In 2007, both games are lighthearted, multiplayer-only affairs pitting teams of colorful characters against each other to capture points, escort packages, and defend bases. Both come from companies known for their focus and perfectionism, with an overall development schedule stretching through the years, and both have an avid fan community powered by a desire for cosmetic unlocks and an appreciation for the larger-than-life figures that populate the game. So these quotations point to the obvious lineage that Overwatch has with Team Fortress 2, but they also point to a set of expectations that the player can have about both of those games. I'll come back to Team Fortress 2 later in this video, but for right now I want to focus on one thing. No new characters. Team Fortress 2 has never added new characters or classes since its release in 2007. We've experienced almost an entire decade with the same number of characters, with their explicit roles, and while Valve has allowed for some maneuverability in the way that we can build those characters, like a murder medic or a melee demo man, they are all fundamentally the same as the day they were released. They have explicit jobs, they do those jobs well, and a good team will figure out which synergies between which characters will allow them to win any given game. Overwatch functions the same way, with the explicit lack of one key element: the spy. The spy is a class that works to sow panic in the ranks. If it gets behind you, he's going to backstab you. If he gets in your business, he's going to destroy your turrets and your teleporters, and if he gets behind the front lines, he can pretend to be your teammate, and he's going to backstab you after that. It's a brutal experience that significantly alters public play of Team Fortress 2. If you're not communicating with your team over some kind of voice chat, you don't know where they are at all times, and if you don't know where they are at all times, they could be a spy. That anxiety introduced into the act of playing Team Fortress 2 is significant. The character forces you into constantly shooting your teammates, looking after turrets, and generally looking backward in case a spy is right behind you. It is profoundly uncomfortable, and a key strength of Overwatch's design is the purposeful removal of a spy character. The counterattack potential of the spy is replaced with less cloak and dagger, so that Pharah becomes the character to push behind enemy lines with. While it's annoying, she's also very visible and clearly not on your team. While this verticality can be really scary and hard to deal with, it doesn't generate nearly as much anxiety in a player as a spy does. And that minimization of anxiety is critical to how Overwatch functions. In the 50 or so hours I've put into Overwatch so far, I've experienced 2 instances of technical difficulties. Both of them were related to connection issues, and each lasted less than 10 seconds. It's a profoundly smooth game that seems to have put an immense amount of effort into making sure that the player is always experiencing uninterrupted play. On the other side, 15 minutes of Team Fortress 2 will show people hopping on top of each other, dying to corner case damage, and clipping through each other's models. Sometimes character models don't load in, and I get it, it came out a long time ago, it's still being supported, and the player base is so massive that many edge cases can destabilize the game experience. But the prioritization of getting rid of these edge cases in Overwatch is critical because it makes the game feel entirely deterministic. A failure is not the fault of lag, it is the fault of the player, and everyone is aware of that. When you dodge an arrow from Hanzo, it isn't because you got lucky, it's because you did something skillful. It's profoundly empowering to know that good things happening in the game are happening because you wanted them to be happening. And there's also something especially crushing about knowing that your failures are always your own failures, that they can't be put off into the game or, blamed on any other system. The lack of interruption in the game world is no small accomplishment, and it's profoundly comforting. You know that your Lucio ultimate is going to save your team if you can use it in time, and you know that the enemy isn't going to lag bounce away from your Junkrat bomb. You also know that when someone yells that it's high noon that something bad or good is going to happen, and when you die halfway through your ultimate that you'll get some of that energy back. It's a wholly consistent universe that clearly signals its state at all times, and the eradication of the glitch is critical to this kind of game, and the kind of player that Overwatch wants to attract and keep. The final element of comfort that I want to mention here is around the narrative. Lots of games that focus on multiplayer forego an explicit plot in order to give a generic narrative framework. League of Legends has its champions and their reasons for going toe-to-toe. Team Fortress 2 has its brother-based ominous demands for red and blue team control, and Counter-Strike has its vague geopolitics. Overwatch has a slightly more robust fictional world where debates about life beyond the human, media effects, and vagaries of science and national security all get knitted together in order to provide a nice, fresh world that pits heroes against villains for control of locations all around the world. While there is undoubtedly an immense amount of narrative work being done by Blizzard, for the most part this is being assembled by the community itself. Overwatch's narrative is almost entirely assembled through the close attention and collaborative labor of its fan community. Lots of what we know about the game, from characters' relationships to one another to why the game's levels are the locations that they are, comes from listening to audio cues, reading the environment, and generally doing some intensive thinking around and about the game. This is especially true when it comes to queer representation in the game. Overwatch has gained some popularity for its representations of queer relationships and lives, but as critic Todd Harper pointed out on Twitter, almost none of that narrative creation is actually being performed by Blizzard. Rather, they have created Overwatch as a narrative platform that can support queer stories, and fans have used that platform to create some wonderful pairings and histories that are neither confirmed nor denied by the corporation that controls the contours of that world. This too is a form of comfort, and it might be the most important kind. No matter what your interaction with the game's story is, you can be assured that your headcanon will fit neatly into the jigsaw puzzle that you negotiate on your own. The explicit hodgepodge of genre mixing and story beats allows it to excel beyond Team Fortress 2 or similar games here. We know more about the characters, which means that we have more ingredients to help mix and match them together. So that's what I have to say about Overwatch and comfort. I think it's a very fortunate and purposeful set of design goals for Blizzard, and the quick uptake of the game points to how they've leveraged those goals into some tangible gains in both design and market space. I think the really exciting part of this is that other design teams can look at this and say, hey, we can get what could be a fairly niche shooter into the mainstream in a really unique way by making sure that people have ways to relate to it in a narrative and mechanical sense. And comfort is critical to that sort of space in the middle. So anyway, I like Overwatch. I think it's a good game. It's fun. I like that.